I'm interested to get the take of SiriusXM, satellite radios, NBA radios, Forbes. It's all over the NBA landscape. Mitch Lawrence joins me now as we come down the stretch in the NBA, Mitch, and have the injuries opened up the field enough to make this an intriguing playoff run, or is it still a 2 to 4 team race?
Well, Mike, first of all, thanks for having me on. It's opened up things, I think, in the West. I think the Western landscape has radically changed with Golden State's loss of Kevin Durant. I think it's a much more level playing field. I think it gives really some hope for teams like San Antonio, maybe even Houston. I don't know about the Clippers, but anytime you lose a player of Kevin Durant's abilities and talent and what he was doing this year, he was in the MVP discussion, especially what he was doing for them at the defensive end. You know, Golden State is no longer the team you looked at and you said they're just going to overwhelm people and outscore people in the playoffs. You know, we don't know, first of all, when Kevin's going to get back. We don't know what condition he's going to be in, what the impact is of that knee. It's a much more serious injury than Steph Curry had last year. I know they're different, but you saw how that impacted Steph Curry. So, yeah, I think for Golden State, I think that's the Durant injury is the one we're all looking at.
Yeah, Mitch, for the people out there who would say, well, they won the title and then they lost in 7 games with virtually the same team. Well, that's the difference. What is different about their team that they don't have from the team that won the championship and then lost in 7 games? They still have the 3 guys that everybody knows, but what's different about the rest?
Well, it's a lot different. Don't have the quality depth anymore. Don't have, guys like Spates, Ezeli, big men, Bogut, obviously, Leandro Barbosa. Those are 4 quality bench players. They were a deeper team last year. Had to give up that depth when they decided to bring in Durant, which is a bit of the roll of the dice, and they felt like, you know what, we'll still have enough people, whether it's Sean Livingston and David West up front and, Zaza Pachulia, and you have some other guys on the bench, a rookie McCaw. But the depth, I would argue, is not the same quality. And the depth that helped them get to 2 straight finals. And, they're up 3-1 last year. They're on the verge of going back-to-back. And then, without Bogut, the rim protection was always a question, even though Durant this year has been playing well enough to be on the first time he'd ever make an all-defense team because of his length, and he's done a great job for him. Bogut was a big player, and you saw Bogut, what impacted them really badly, besides Draymond Green being suspended for Game 5 last year, which we all think really killed them, and because they probably would have closed out on their home court. Anyway, they didn't have Bogut for Game 6 or 7. He went down with that knee injury, and they didn't have any rim protection. And now it was really you have to factor that in because of Durant's loss. So it's a much different team. Yeah, they've got Curry, and they got Klay Thompson, and they got Draymond Green, but there are some issues there that makes them a lot more vulnerable.
Hey, Mitch, you mentioned the Clippers. How come that team has not been able to get over the hump? What is missing? Why? I mean, if you have Blake Griffin and you're making a decision, what is missing? You got Paul, you got Griffin. What is missing?
Yeah, you got really 3 really good players. You've got a great regular season team that wins 50 games easily. Chris Paul is considered an elite point guard and a great leader. But you know what? Some people just chalk it up to, Mike, the Clippers being the Clippers. I mean, a couple of years ago, when they're they're 14 minutes away. They're a quarter basically away from advancing out of the second round to their first ever Western Conference final in Game 6, and they implode against Houston, right? And they lose Game 6 and they lose Game 7. Game 6 is on their home court. They're up, 15, 18 points, whatever it was. I mean, the only explanation after that game was it's just the Clippers being the Clippers, and they've been this star-crossed, snake-pick, whatever you want to call it, franchise. And even guys like Chris Paul and Blake Griffin and DeAndre Jordan, who've only been around, a few years, but it's not like they've been there the whole time of the Clippers franchise, obviously. They're impacted by it. So who knows? It's just one of those things where nobody really takes the Clippers seriously because we all know they got to prove it in the playoffs, and usually something happens where they don't. And let's remember, a couple of years ago, they beat San Antonio with Chris Paul having his signature moment, arguably, in the playoffs, hitting that game winner to get out of the first round against the Spurs. We all felt like, wow, they could take the Rockets. They'll beat the Rockets, and then they're off to the races. Didn't happen. We're still waiting for it. So there's really no explanation.
Mitch Lawrence with us here on the Badge 97.3 ESPN, longtime NBA columnist, now a host on SiriusXM's NBA Radio, Forbes, Sporting News. How low down in the West are you giving shots to win? You got Golden State at the top with San Antonio 2. Right now it's Houston, Utah, L.A., Memphis, OKC, Denver holding off Portland. How many of those teams are legit?
Well, in terms of who can win the title, it's really 2. I think Houston's had a tremendous year. First of all, it's obviously Golden State and San Antonio.
Uh-huh.
But, Houston's had this phenomenal year. They were at one time on a pace to win about 64 games. They've cooled off since then, but Harden's been an MVP. It's been great for Mike D'Antoni. This has been a rebirth for him. James Harden is really, to me, still the favorite to win the MVP because he's making these guys around him better. He doesn't really have all-star caliber talent around him, and he's gotten, look what Eric Gordon's done, Ryan Anderson and Ariza, and they're entertaining, which has got nothing really to do with the argument, but, they've been a fun watch. But can they play defense well enough? Can they shoot their way, shooting 53s a game in the playoffs? I have a hard time believing that. And then after that, we all have our doubts about the Clippers. Memphis is that team that intrigues everybody because they play a little playoff style, and they seem to be a threat. And, maybe, they gave Golden State a run for their money. They were up 2-1 in 2015 with Mike Conley with a broken bone in his face, and then, Tony Allen got hurt. And Memphis could be dangerous. Do you think Utah, because this year they've taken, it looked like they're taking that next step, but you know what? This is going to be, for them, a new deal in the playoffs with their guy. I know they've got the veterans like George Hill and Joe Johnson, and, if Gordon Hayward's played great and Gobert, they've got a lot to prove too. So really, when you just break it down, it's really the 2 teams. It's really Golden State. It's really San Antonio. Oklahoma City, they'll make the playoffs with Russell Westbrook. We're all hoping for a Durant-Westbrook first round, maybe 2 versus 7 if Golden State falls. But you can't. Russell Westbrook, he's scoring 58 points these games, and they can't even win. So we're not taking them that seriously. So it's really a 2-horse race.
Well, and Mitch, the intrigue here is Dallas has won 3 in a row. Dirk, remember, he was not healthy. He's now healthy, playing pretty well. They got Nerlens Noel out there. They've won 3 in a row. And we all know in Philly, you're kind of watching them. That pick that didn't look like a pick maybe turns into something. Can Dallas make a late run here? They're 2 games out of the 8th spot.
I know. Never sell them short. Rick Carlisle does a great job. Nowitzki, he has battled back from these leg injuries last night, crossed the 30,000-point plateau. First time that's been done in a while, and only the 6th player in the history of the league to do that. And he could definitely win them games. I'm still thinking Portland. Portland had a big win last night in Oklahoma City. They're right there for 8th place. They made the playoffs last year. It's been a horrendous year for them in terms of what everybody expected. They got to the second round last year. Obviously, Chris Paul and Blake Griffin getting hurt helped them tremendously in that series. But, I think the fight for 8th place is going to be interesting because Denver is trying to make it. They've got the great player in the middle, Jokic, Yusuf Nurkic, and Mike Malone's done a tremendous job there. I don't know if they're going to actually make it. I got a feeling it's going to be Dallas or Portland. And right now, I still think Lillard will get them there, get the Blazers to 8th place.
That West should be fun. And by the way, Minnesota is another team, very young. Everyone kind of looking at them on that, when are these guys going to pop and make it? These are these second halves of the year where a lot of these young teams are starting to play better basketball. But let me get your opinion, Mitch, on what has happened in New Orleans since that deal.
Well, what's happened is it hasn't really worked with Cousins and
That's
Davis.
probably the best way you could answer that question, by the way.
It really, we all know he's talented, and we all know he's probably going to be on his best behavior, although he's already served 1 suspension because he's got, he's got more technical fouls than Rasheed Wallace used to get. Basically, he's that type of player. He's a hothead. But if you look at the supporting, look at the cast around these guys, there's not a lot there other than Drew Holiday. So they need other players. That's obvious. And, it's never easy. I'll say this. Last 20, 25 games of the year, you've basically revamped your team. You sent off Buddy Hield, who I don't know how good Buddy Hield's going to be. I don't think he's as good as the Sacramento owner who thinks he can, be the star, Buddy Hield. But they've had, that's a significant change. You're changing the way you play. You're changing the way Anthony Davis plays in some respect. So I didn't think they would make the playoffs. I still think they won't. But what can they do in the future to surround those guys with the type of players that's going to, they're going to need some big-time veteran or two for the locker room with with DeMarcus Cousins because you never know. He could fly off the handle. He's been brutal with teammates. We know that in the past, so it takes a special type of player. Players, remember Larry Brown in Philadelphia years ago when he had Iverson. He had to have certain type of strong character, big-time players like the George Lynches and the Eric Snows and those guys to surround Iverson with, okay? And so it's going to take – they're different. I'm not comparing Iverson to DeMarcus Cousins in terms of, his on-court histrionics, but you're going to need big-time veteran leadership in that locker room to make sure that they check that guy all the time. And, that's going to take an off-season. We'll see if Del Demps saved his job, the GM, by pulling off that trade or not. There was a lot of talk early in the year that Del Demps was gone,
right,
which means they were going to have a new GM. So who knows how that's going to work out.
Mitch Lawrence, SiriusXM NBA Radio. I want to get your take, following the league long time, the impact of Dirk, 30,000 last night. There are so many people that think the game looks like it does today thanks to him. I mean, whether you like all the threes and how open it is, he is kind of the guy that started that trend. So just your take of following this league for a long time and what Dirk, the impact he has made in this league.
Well, first of all, it's one of the lopsided trades in the history of the league. It was a draft day deal where Dallas had Robert Tractor Trailer, who was a wide body, big bruiser type, not real highly skilled, but they sent him up to Milwaukee. Milwaukee drafted Dirk Nowitzki for Don Nelson, who was then running the show in Dallas. And, you bring in a guy who's close to 7 feet, if not 7 feet, who's got a tremendous jump shot. And what we've seen now, when you look at the way Dirk is playing and the way you could have a 7-footer who can dominate on the perimeter with one of the great jump shots in history. I mean, if you watch the replay last night of the basket over Larry Nance Jr. on the baseline, where Dirk at this age can still elevate, and he's basically got an unblockable shot. It's not as unblockable as Kareem's skyhook, but it's pretty good. And so how did that factor into the Mavericks and all the scoring that he done? The way now, I don't know if he changed the way the game was played, but he certainly brought in this European big man influence where guys like we see now, Porzingis, who came in from Latvia, he can shoot threes. You have all these stretch fours. That's, Dirk was a big part of that. But, you have to also go back to the fact that the Mavericks, 2006, they go to the finals, and they're built around Dirk Nowitzki, and they have, I think, a 2-1 lead over Miami, or 2-0, and then they get swept out in the series. And at that point, the next year, they go out in the first round after winning 67 games, and the Mavericks at that point are at a crossroads where everybody's basically telling them, you got to get rid of this guy. He's a great regular season scorer, but he'll never be the leader to get you to where you need to go in terms of the promised land. And lo and behold, 2011, without a great supporting cast, without a all-star quality guy in his prime, without a Hall of Famer guy in his prime. Yes, he had Jason Kidd, but that's an advanced Jason Kidd. He takes them and he takes the Mavericks, and not only did they beat the Spurs, who were really the class of the West at that point, he beats the Big Three in Miami with LeBron James. Whoever thought that would happen after Miami's up in the series 2-1. And so there's a couple of lessons here. First of all, you talk about the type of player that Nowitzki was and how that translates now when we see more and more Europeans. He's the greatest European scorer, the greatest European player in NBA history. I'm sure Don Nelson wasn't thinking he was getting that. But then also he teaches a lesson for these teams who might be thinking about giving up on their franchise player of, look, sometimes it doesn't work right away, and you got to ride this out, and you got to really surround him with the right players. And you know what? You can never really give up on a guy like that because even if he's been in the league, I guess that was his 12th year. I think he came in 98, 99 in there.
Yep.
So it's his 12th, 13th year. He can still get you there if you surround him with the right people. So there's a lesson to be learned there. So what a tremendous career. I love the fact that there are only 2 other players, Mike, who have scored 30,000 points with the same team. Kobe Bryant was one. Karl Malone was the other. Of course, Karl Malone ended up with Utah, but he was well above 30,000 at that point. And what I love about Nowitzki, he's already talking about coming back for his 20th year. He sees what Kobe did in Dallas. He sees what Kobe did in Los Angeles, rather, with the Lakers. He sees what Duncan did in San Antonio. You got to love these guys who stick it out with one team. He's been an MVP. He's been a Finals MVP. Yes, he's had his setbacks, but how about late in his career, he finally got the chance to win a title And he is really Mr. Maverick when it comes down to it, the greatest player in the franchise history.
Well put, Mitch Lawrence with us. You mentioned the Lakers, 19 wins. They've won, lost 8 in a row.
8 in a row. Keep losing.
They keep losing, and you got a mess going on over there. Can Magic fix all that? I mean, he's officially in there now. Does he come in, smile, and it's all better?
Well, the thing that he did, the best thing he did so far was he traded Lou Williams, not because he got a future number one, but by trading Lou Williams, he basically guaranteed that they're going to get one of their top three pick, because Lou Williams was his best offensive player. Let's say his most efficient, his most reliable offensive player. And if Lou Williams was still on the team, they might be, Lou Williams could win you some games, these meaningless games where, the deal now for Magic is you got to load up on the ping pong balls. Now, if they finish out of the top three, they lose that pick, right? Isn't it going to Philadelphia?
Yes,
so
if they're not in the top three, Philadelphia gets that pick from 4 on.
Now they've already. It's a great thing since Magic's been on board. You trade Lou Williams, that impacts your chances of winning. That means you got more ping pong balls. And by the way, Phoenix is trying to win, and now the Lakers have the second worst record to Brooklyn. When he took over, I think they had the third worst. So they're improving themselves there. It's not only the Philly pick in 2019. If they had finished out of the top three this year in terms of the worst record or the worst bottom three, that their 2019 pick would have gone to Orlando. For Magic Johnson, he can't afford to lose. Those are two potential building blocks. So this is good the way they're losing. This is tanking the way you want it to be when you've got young players who still can't win you games, but at least they're learning on the job. So now the big question about Magic Johnson is he's got to find himself a Magic Johnson, a LeBron James. He's got to find himself a player, because right now it looks like Brandon Ingram, Julius Randle, and D'Angelo Russell there might be an all-star in there, but there's no MVP candidate for the future.
Okay.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that now. We've seen enough of D'Angelo Russell. I don't know about Ingram. He's still pretty young. Maybe I'll give him an outside shot. And Julius Randle, you know what he is. That's what Magic needs. Magic talks about, bringing the Lakers back and bringing them back to a point where they're competing for championships. He calls it their rightful place because he went to 9 finals in 12 years. He won 5 rings. Well, here's the deal. You can only do that with players who one day you're going to retire their number, who are going to be MVP players, who are going to be like Kobe Bryant. How does Magic, and now his new GM, Rob Pelinka, how do they get a player or two like that? I don't know. I don't know if Magic knows, but I know this. He doesn't have one now.
Mitch Lawrence is with us. We talked a lot, Wes. Let's just get your overview real quick on the East. Cleveland, Boston playing Golden State tonight. Should be fun. Does anybody, because did Washington challenge, can anybody challenge Cleveland?
Well, I don't think, the interesting thing, Cleveland had a big loss. Not huge, but the Bogut loss hurts because Bogut really was going to give them a great backup for Tristan Thompson and give them some size and some rim protection. And they beat out Boston for that. Bogut told people it came down to Cleveland or Boston, even though Houston was the team that really wanted him worse than anybody. So that's a big loss. He breaks his leg. He's out for the year. He's out for the playoffs. Cleveland's a little bit limited on that back line. Look, as well as Washington is playing, Boston, you got to like what they do at points. They've struggled since the All-Star break, especially defensively, that they're a small team. And as much as you like what Toronto did at the trade deadline, I don't think any of those three teams can take Cleveland to a Game 7, maybe even a Game 6, we'll see. But really, really extend Cleveland and make it hard for them as long as they have LeBron, Kyrie Irving, and if Kevin Love comes back, and it's not just his knee we're talking about, it's his back, if that holds up. So if those three guys are healthy and they're playing great, and they still are a team that has enough depth with the Deron Williams, pickup, and they've got these other guys, and J.R. Smith comes back, I don't see anybody in the East challenging Cleveland.
Yeah, I was going to say, it just the West seems fun now because of the injury to Durant. It seems like it's more entertaining. The East still doesn't seem like it's going to have a lot of entertainment or a lot of fun.
Mike, we were waiting to see if Boston was going to do anything at the trade deadline. The fact they didn't break up their team to get in a Jimmy Butler or Paul George pretty much tells you that Danny Ainge is still looking at the long term, maybe waiting out LeBron if that's possible. But he doesn't, you can't send off pieces and bring back a player and think you're going to beat Cleveland. Washington, they still have a bad road record, and now this month for them, they're on a 5-game trip now. It's going to be a brutal month for them, a lot of road games. They're not even a 500 team on the road. They've done all their damage at home. I'm not sure about them. Toronto looks like to me the team that's going to inevitably meet Cleveland. Good pickups in Ibaka and Tucker. But I don't know if I've told you this before, but my line of thinking on Toronto is they remind me a lot of the Indiana teams from a few years ago that kept on battling Miami in the playoffs, went to a Game 7 conference finals, I think it was, went to a Game 6, but could never get over the hump because they just don't have anybody to deal with LeBron, and it's the same way for Toronto now.
All right, good stuff. Mitch Lawrence, SiriusXM NBA Radio here, longtime NBA columnist, Sporting News, Forbes, and, of course, right here on the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN is the NBA starting to pick up here as we get down the stretch for these playoffs coming up here shortly. Looking forward to hopefully entertaining playoffs. That's what I want to see, some entertaining playoffs, although I think we all kind of understand what the ending might be.
Great.
Mitch, take care.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me.